There's no doubt about it, my friends. We are curious as human beings. But as you go along the scale of curiosity, as curiosity goes up, the number of people depletes and depletes and depletes. There are very, very few that will take truth-seeking to its ultimate conclusion. And if you look at anything, any institution, that we align ourselves with, whether it's politics, religion, sport, what you'll observe is how deeply emotional these issues are. They're tribal. And it's something that we don't necessarily want to admit very, very quickly, if at all, that we don't make decisions rationally. We make them emotionally. And in the aftermath, we will justify them rationally. And I'm just watching a particular podcast with the artist Bob Moran, who did wonderful things for the pursuit of truth during the lockdown COVID era. And I hate to say it, it's a bit of a struggle because the podcast host is somebody that I really, really struggle with. And this is what I mean. We have a visceral reaction to things, but it's just been announced, I think today or very, very recently, that there's a very prominent politician here in the UK. He's called Rupert Lowe. And he was part of Reform UK, which was it's Nigel Farage's outfit. But he was quickly thrown from the bus by them, and he went independent. He started not even a political party, but a movement. But he's actually announced that he's launching a national political party here in the UK, and it's actually called after the town that he represents, which is called Great Yarmouth, which is one of the old-fashioned seaside resorts where Edwardians and Victorians used to go to take in the sea air and, take the waters and all these kinds of things. But like many of the seaside towns here in the UK are a bit tired, a bit dated, and in need of revival. And I just thought, well, excuse me, hi. Isn't the whole point of trying to revive politics, isn't it sort of about alliances rather than all of these separate little faction parties springing up, which, when it comes to elections here in the UK, what ultimately always happens is that you have these tiny insurrection parties who split the vote of the major parties that the majority of people still vote for, amazingly, but people do, have total faith, tribal faith in their party. And what you realise is that everybody wants their position, they want their reputation to be upheld, they want their own thing, and fair enough, on a personal level. But when it comes to all of these political dissidents, well, what you realise is there's a huge amount of ego that's going on, and it's always and it's exposed in times of great turmoil, let's say. And you realise that actually getting down to the truth, we hear talk all the time of his truth and her truth and our truths. It's like, no. We have our perspectives and we have the things that we're all individually doing on a daily basis. But there is objective truth. There are actually things that we can agree upon. Beauty and what various, political positions are. We have an instinctive knowledge of these things because they are truthful and they're solid. But we all want to have our own way. And I tweeted the other day, actually, that one of the big glitches in any culture is behaving privately in public. And if you're on a bus and there's somebody playing loud music without their headphones on. Well, that's behaving privately in public, and we find that all very, very distant. And when when I saw that this chap, Rupert Lowe, I keep wanting to call him Richard, I don't know why, Rupert Lowe, launching his own party, I did just laugh and think, just enjoy the pantomime of it, because if people genuinely wanted to achieve particular political ends, well, they would ally with each other. They would get together, they would drop their egos, and they would actually work towards a common good, truthfully and authentically. But obviously, they don't do that. And it just made me realise that the individual, you, me, sovereign, independent people making decisions for themselves, as we do, that to me is the only thing that has any longitude. It's the only thing that has any sort of lasting effect. You don't actually need to have a majority to make things work. And when you realise that politics and sport and organised religion, they're all pantomimes, they're all show, they're all theatre, when you actually dig down and look at how people are behaving, what they're doing, not what they say, not what they think, not what they think the ideal should be. When you look at people's behaviour, we are always acting out of self-interest. The idea of a selfless person is a complete misnomer. It's a fallacy, because we can't help but act out of personal interest. And it's why I focus on values, on principles, and I may fail certain times. I may fall short of embodying particular principles, but I know that the more peaceful I become and the more personally responsible that I become, the better my life becomes, because I can act in a conscious way when I'm looking at my own behaviour, taking responsibility, like an adult, like a man for that. My life becomes simpler. It becomes more conducive to actually getting on with doing as much good as I possibly can, and not putting my trust and faith in people who are too far away to actually do anything about it for me. If you're waiting for somebody else to be your saviour, you are wasting your time. And I think we know this, but there are certain times where we can feel so desperate for somebody to come and rescue us that we forget that we need to be rescuing ourselves. We need to be our own heroes. And sometimes that's very sobering, and sometimes it feels enormously overwhelming. But the more that you can actually stare these demons in the face, pulling you in particular directions, saying, oh, put your faith in me, trust this plan. No. Trust your own plan to live your own life and act out of as much compassion and humanity as you can. That's always the thing that is the most grounding, because it always places the responsibility in your hands, where you can actually administer that and where you can act for yourself. Anything else is delusion. And I think we know this. The truth matters. And our own personal pursuit of that is the most powerful way to live.